That night, the collector left for the mill too late. He stepped from the edge of R's white sand shores and walked toward the cold rock island that held the mill. The sea air rushing into his sleeves and the waves lapping at his ankles were welcome feelings. He was going somewhere. Movement was what made him feel alive. Or, the collector corrected himself, whatever I am that passes for being alive. Despite the relief of making a journey, his body was heavy. Halfway to the island, the collector changed his composition and stood on the surface of the dark sea. There was nothing but silence and the churn of water. No moon or stars lit the plain of the black sky. Only a swath of blue light emanating from the jar of lights forced back the night. On instinct, the collector scanned the horizon for Caladrius, and for a second, he thought he saw a tiny bird-shaped bunch of stars soaring against the clouds. Of course, it was nothing. His eyes were playing tricks on him. He gathered his fingers on the handle of his lantern and walked. 2 nights prior, the collector and Caladrius had escaped King Faradays' palace. The collector had stumbled over the palace square, a wide stretch of black tile occupied only by a line of clockwork guards, and the king's massive, crimson-sailed warship. Free of the shadow of the palace, he lurched into an alley after Caladrius. It took him a second to realize this was the same length of alleyway they had followed Cameron Augustin into on the day Lillian and Philip Just were executed. The day this all began. Caladrius, squawking, had led the collector to the little alcove where Cameron had sat waiting for Wynne Just. The alcove was empty, a brick closet with a thin, slimy pipe sticking out the base of one wall. The collector had run inside and pressed his back to the knobby bricks, setting the jar of lights down by his ankles with a shaking hand. He'd passed his palms over his chest, his arms, and his legs, searching for wounds, as if the king's gaze could bore him full of holes. But there were no holes, simply the starry, insubstantial fabric of his coat, the ends of his sleeves, and the tops of his boots. Having judged himself unharmed, he'd hurriedly upturned a cupped palm. Caladrius. She'd landed in the bowl of his hand. Her feathers were ruffled, spread every which way as if she'd been caught in a thunderstorm. The collector had passed his fingertips gently over her wings. She was okay, too. What happened? The collector had rasped. He sank back against the wall. He looked right at us, Cal. He talked to us. Caladrius had shaken out her feathers, making a barely audible twittering sound. The message was clear. She didn't know. Whatever she'd expected to happen when she led the collector into the palace tonight, being seen by the king was a surprise. It's wrong. The collector had lifted her to his shoulder, then rubbed his hands over his face. We never should have been here. Caladrius had chirped, squeezing his coat in her claws. He saw us, Cal, and I took a breath. I needed to take a breath. Through his fingers, he'd stared at the souls, bobbing in the jar of lights. He recalled the urge to breathe, the feeling of drowning in the throne room, his lips parting and a stream of air filling his lungs. And with the air, a memory.